Hello, true art believers, and welcome to today's installment of the Artist Interview Series. Today, I will be talking with digital artist Sergey Kir, creator of the art style Conceptivism. His work deals primarily with concepts of biblical history and many other things. Actually, he's going to talk about those for everyone to hear. Right. That's all I remember that he was talking about was talking about biblical history and how he relates it to the contemporary world. Before we start, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. And you don't have to hit a notifications bell. I don't have anything. I don't have anyone notified me on YouTube, so you don't have to do that. But feel free to do that. Thank you and enjoy the show. Let's get this started. Ba-boom. Sergey Kir, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Matt. How are you? Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I'm a huge fan of your show, so definitely was looking forward to our discussion.
I apologize that I just blanked out for a second because you had you have a huge history of work that has to deal with how you what's it called, you have a huge theories and concepts behind your work, and we only brushed a bit upon one little kernel of it, dealing with biblical work, right? But you also do other things. Is that correct?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we start, I always like to ask this question. What was art like for you as a child?
So it's a great question, actually. It's a very, very, I was growing up I was born in this, city called Zhytomyr, Ukraine, former Soviet Union. And then I was growing up in my high school and middle school in Russia, in a Russian city called Murmansk. It's like a North Circle. So really, there was no art. It was like a mass media bringing up some kind of stories, and some books were bringing up the stories about, if I remember correctly, like a Russian historical history of Russian art, and some of the conceptual indications of like a contemporary art, but very, very little of that. So I think I've acquired a taste for art and appreciation of art more so in the States, here in New York, more so than in Russia. Also, Russia has a great, a very profound history of art, and they cherish their art and they celebrate it. But I think my kind of embracement of the art and development of my own art style and development of my perception of being an artist and just like being an artist came here in the States. So I'm grateful to my new homeland for that. Absolutely.
Before we talk about you move into America, what were some of the things that you made as a child, like art related?
So mine was just more like I'm a huge fan. I was and I'm still is a huge fan of just like a historical ships, like a sailing ships. So in my childhood, some people were making planes and like a locomotives and stuff like that. I was making historical ships with like sails. I would spend like hours and months to build ships. And I built maybe 3 or 4 of them. So that's what I was doing. I was just kind of meticulously crafting, cutting up the wood and paper and stuff like that, so as to make this big contemporary, big historical ships. So that was kind of my, as much as I came to the art creation, and I think it was art, but it was more like a creation of my. Expression of my just kind of appreciation of this history of the countries and the world, and just like the ships were just a representation of this like my perception of the world, that ship is something that allows you to see the world, to see the beauty of the world, to see the different intricacies of the different situations of the world. So but I wasn't thinking of that as like art. Now I am, but it's great.
Were you making them as you were doing actual like models from a model kit, or were you actually constructing your own models?
Well, my own model. So
Wow.
like it was very limited like availability of the just the blueprints of that.
Mhm.
So there was this like a magazine called Contemporary Designer, I think it was called, like Contemporary Designer, and I would just go to the library and I would get that historical. I would just like brush through that, and I would get like maybe a model that I love. So like I remember like I was building like a Mayflower. There were a couple of Russian ships called Oriole, the Eagle, the first ever Russian ship built by Peter the Great of the there's like a whole beginning of the Russian Navy. Peter the Great called Oriole, like an eagle. There was another ship like a Predestination, another like a Russian ship. Golden Hind was my favorite ship that I built. Like Golden Hind, Sir Francis Drake. From British Empire. It was at that time England, right? So he would set in that Golden Hind, set sail across the world, and he did the first ever circling of the world. He was a pirate. He was like this kind of like a gentleman of the free will. He would like attack Spanish ships and stuff like that. It was very inspirational for me. And I wanted to build it. Like I just couldn't imagine. Like when I built it, I remember I was looking at that ship and I was just saying like, how could this small ship inspire somebody to go over the world, risking their life and their everything. And what would we do that? But then I kind of did it myself. I went to the States. I mean, it wasn't like sailing over the world and like sailing to the unknown world, like the United States was just kind of a known world. It was like an enemy at the time, but also frenemy kind of a thing. So we admired it. I remember I was a political leader. I was a political leader in the class of like a Russian like a school children. And I was like I was trying to educate them about politics, about
how old were you?
I was like about maybe like 13, 14.
13-year-old political leader.
Yeah, like we had this like a political kind of positions, and I was just I was like grabbing that because so it was kind of the idea was that you would present it in a way that you would teach children that look how these guys are living, but at the same time it was an admiration. At the same time, it was kind of like a trying to kind of present in a situation which was very, I want to say, not negative, definitely not negative, but look how different these guys are. But at the same time, look how different these guys are. We just want to be so much. We just want to go there and just like experience it for ourselves and then make a decision about about that. So it was very, very interesting.
What was your favorite ship that you made as a kid? You said it. But like, say it again. Which one was that?
So there were a few I made. I made like the first one was Golden Hind.
Wasn't that your favorite one?
It was my probably favorite one. But there were two. So this one and the second one was the. So there was this about 13 or maybe 14th century union of the German cities, such as Lübeck, Ganza. It was called Ganza. So like a Lübeck, Hamburg, and bunch of others. They were free citizens, like a free kind of like a commerce cities. They kind of joined together. They had this thing called Magdeburg Right, like a 13th century, like a sets of laws that allowed them to make commerce like between each other and and settle disputes and stuff like that. And so the Russian and Kievan Rus cities were the first one to get this Magdeburg right. So like for me, it was just kind of like trying to find this this Western influence in the Russian Russian upbringing that I was, that I was having, Russian cities. I was born in Zhytomyr. Zhytomyr acquired this Magdeburg right in 1444. Kiev acquired it, like Kiev, Ukraine, the capital of Ukraine right now, acquired it like in 1477 or something like that. So I was just kind of like just trying to, get my hands on anything I could learn about the shipbuilding, the history, just the history of the countries. But then, so this Ganza Kog, the name of the ship called Kog, Kogg. It's like a one sail, very, very like commercial ship. But it took me like maybe like 2 years to build. I remember I was just, meticulously because there was no blueprints for that. I was just kind of like looking at it from different like paintings and pictures that I was acquiring. I was like maybe like I would say like 12, 13.
12, 13, and you were spending 2 years on one project?
Yeah. It was great. It was awesome. Yeah, I would go to like I would go to the library. I would just get okay, I have this painting, and then I would just kind of like try to draw some mock-ups and stuff like that, and then would try to like build it like from like all kinds of like wood and like penoplast and like a couple of other like things. So, but then I would just scrap it. I would just bring it back again until I think at some point I found a little bit of a blueprint in this magazine that I was looking, and that magazine kind of provided that blueprint, and I was just able to build it up. So I still remember that night when I finished it, I would just go to sleep, and I was so fascinated by it. I would just wake up every hour of that night, and I would look at it, and it would be standing there on the on a shelf. I was just so fascinated by it. It was just like I was unbelievable with my first ever art project. I'm thinking right now about that, like that.
2 years, your first ever art project, and you didn't have like a sense of like a load taken off where you just felt really, really tired afterwards, but you're actually energized.
Yeah, I was totally energized. In fact, it actually inspired me to do more. And then I set onto this golden hind. That was my second one. And then there was a lot of, and then at some point, I remember there was this like a Polish magazine, called Modern Modelage. I forgot the name of it. Like it's like a modern, like an engineer, modern engineer. So they would bring it was like a paper magazine. And you would cut out the pieces and you would build it up. So there was more like a modern ships, like a 1940s, 1990s, different, more like a contemporary, like a iron ships, kind of like a man of war and stuff like that. So I would do that as well. So I had like the whole ships like all over me. Like at some point, I remember like when I was 16. I remember like I had my entire house, my entire room was like covered in ships. Oh, and then it was like a funny story that you asked about that, Thomas. So here in the States, about maybe 20 years ago, I found this company in California that would sell these ships. And I called them up and I negotiated a great price for the ships. I think they were closing down. So I bought maybe 15 of those ships, 15. So, and they were big. They were like 40 inches long, each of them. So I remember once, when they arrived, it was 15 big containers like that. I opened them up and there was an entire floor covered by ships. And I felt like this fascination of just acquiring, when I was maybe 30, 35, my love for this, for the ships, for just kind of, but ships were more to me than just ship themselves. It was more like a representation of just a desire to conquer the world, desire to see the things around me, see the different things around me. I remember it was dream about okay, so what was the kind of the embodiment of conquering the world? It was just setting sail to France and then dining on the restaurant on the Eiffel Tower. There were 2 restaurants in the Eiffel Tower, One was just a Jules Verne, it was called. The second one was just a regular, regular restaurant. And I remember dining at the Jules Verne restaurant, maybe when I was like 27, when I moved already, when I migrated to the United States, immigrated. And so it was just like a fascinating concept to me. Yeah, it was just like when you dream about something and then you just kind of achieving it, it was just spectacular. It was just, I couldn't just comprehend how wonderful it was.
So you have, do you still have all those ships?
So I sold a lot of them. I have some of it. Yes, I have some.
Do you have the ones from your childhood?
No, unfortunately not.
No,
yeah,
none of,
I mean,
you don't have any of them.
No.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Was it a like a loss when you had to let go of them?
Painful. It was painful. Yes, because I had to immigrate to the United States. We just we had this like big bags of stuff we took. And I remember going through the customs in Soviet Union. I mean, it was actually Russia, in Russia. And like we had to like leave a lot of stuff. So we would have to leave like this bag and that bag. And some stuff we left behind. It was painful. I think I had like some stuff that I took from my childhood, but then I gave them as gifts to my friends because they were like pretty big. They were like, about 30 by 40 by maybe 20. So like a pretty sizable kind of sizable kind of ships.
Yeah.
So it was painful, but at the same time, it was also teaching me a lesson of just something that's very, very, very dear to you.
Yeah.
When you give up to somebody, it fills you with kind of joy as well.
You were giving them something,
Yes,
you were given a gift.
Explain. Yeah, I was giving them a gift.
In the most simplest of form, you're given a gift. Something you put your heart and soul into, and something that cannot, probably can now, but like cannot be replicated.
Yes, absolutely. Probably not. Yeah.
So what made you move to the States?
So we were, that's a very interesting question. So we were, it was like it was an immigrant visa. It was an immigrant visa and a visa related to just a refugee status kind of visa, right? So we were Jewish. My father was Jewish. My mother was like Russian and Ukrainian. So it was kind of a mixture, and I had this mixed upbringing. I've experienced some like anti-Semitism, but then I also kind of experienced like some admiration and some just kind of so it was like a really, very strange. I can't say that it was like an anti-Semitism, but it was more like a little bit of okay, maybe some people were like selective people were just just kind of upbringing of theirs were not to the particular fondness of the Jews, but then at the same time most of the people were okay. But then my father experienced like a lot of that. Actually, he was like a full Jew and he looked like a Jew basically. So and I remember but basically there was like a last couple of years of the program that the United States had for the Russian Jewry to come to the United States, and we kind of like get on that, and so we came in. So it was I'm thinking about that, like when you are in the homogeneous kind of environment, right?
Yeah.
When you live in a country which doesn't practice anything anti something, right? I mean, although here in the States we are seeing a lot of different situations and the new age methodology and just kind of perception of the world. You have to find and you have to kind of come up with some kind of a form of being offended about something, about anything. But at that time, I remember there was like a mixture of feelings that I was experiencing. Like, imagine like going into the other country for good, forever, leaving your homeland, leaving your friends, leaving some of your family, which I have not seen for like many years after that. It was very challenging. but it was also, so it was like later I learned that the risk concept of risk in Chinese is expressed by two signs. One called is danger, the other one is called opportunity. So when you put the two together, you realize that what's dangerous is also full of opportunities. And I try to capitalize on that. And, it actually developed my artistic sensibilities, and I became an artist here in the States. It took also about 15 years to kind of develop, but still, just the fact that I'm in New York, and New York is the capital of the world of art right now. It captured it from France, from Paris, maybe in the 60s. And I was just like, I'm attending like all the art exhibitions, all the art shows, all the expos that I am, that happening in New York. So it was great. It was just, it's just interesting where you come to New York. I remember coming to New York. Oh, and there was a very, very cool story. So my grandfather, who invited us to come to the States, he was living in Minneapolis, Minnesota, right? So our plane would be flying. And so my father was a illegitimate son of my grandfather, right? Illegitimate son. So my grandfather came to the synagogue and came to the United States immigration, service, and said, like, listen, my family is here. I brought them all, but I have my illegitimate son who lives still in Ukraine, in Soviet Union. At the time, it was Ukraine, 1993. So I want to invite him because my heart is, not at ease, because he still lives there. I want to see it. I want to see him close to my eye, close to, my heart. Mm-hmm. So, and, the whole process started. And then after that, so we were on a plane. My grandfather, when we were on the plane, he came to the, to the immigration service, or to whoever was sponsoring that. And he said, listen, my wife just wants me to she does not want my illegitimate son to be in Minneapolis. In fact, she is so mad and so disgusted by the fact that I'm bringing my illegitimate son to the States that she wants me get out of the house. So I cannot take them in Minneapolis. Please return them back to the Ukraine, or just keep them somewhere in New York or something like that. He knew we would not be like we would not be put to the plane back to Ukraine or to Russia or to Soviet Union, but he knew that we would be like kept in New York. So I remember like this United States Customs official come into us, and they saying like, so we have great news for you, but we also have a very bad news for you. We're like, what's up? Well, you cannot fly to Minneapolis, Minnesota, because your grandfather said he doesn't want you in his house.
Oh, wow.
Like, all right. So what's the good news? Well, you can stay in New York. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So we said, like, we're fine. We stay in New York, and we stay in New York. And then it all developed from that. So it was a monumental and very like influential decision to stay in New York, actually.
And what was it like being in New York at that time when you first landed?
It was it was very, New York was like a 1994, 1993 Giuliani time. New York was like a Times Square was like full of this. I still kind of remember, that Crocodile Dundee movie. I don't know if you remember that. You ever watched it? It was really like prostitutes walking on the streets. There were a lot of this, like erotic stores all over the place. In the places where right now there's corporate big buildings, like that stand right now, and it's all kind of beautiful corporate glass and steel kind of architecture. There was all this like old buildings. And it was like a really, really like a shocking a little bit. But also it was kind of like it was shocking in the sense that it was just, like we couldn't see anything like that back in Russia or Ukraine. But at the same time, it was very like a inspirational, because now you could see, you could do anything basically, right? So there was like a sign that you could do anything. Maybe in few years, all of that was kind of shut down and closed down. but it was, I still remember that time when, like New York right now is just very sterilized, and you know, to some degree. I mean, my perception of it anyway. But it's very, you know, you see like you go to Times Square, it's all the brand new buildings just developed recently, high floors, and you know, all beautiful architecture, and I mean, some people say soulless architecture, but also very, like, I mean, I like it. I like the contemporary art. I like the and contemporary architecture. I mean, there was like who was that? Like, it was I forgot the name of the American artist who built these houses. He said that the highest form of art, architecture is the highest form of art, because it takes precision and planning and you know, and calculations. So architecture is like so right now architecture is like very beautiful and you know, and inspiring, and you know, and it's reaching to the stars and to the skies, but it may be lost a little bit of its just kind of like a appeal of just being, you know, it's all kind of aiming to be grand, right? So aiming to be grand and manifesting itself to be grand and high and, you know, and tall and beautiful and expensive, right? At that time, 1993, it was just like, it was not like that. It was just more like a, you know, who cares about what? You just be there in Times Square, like in the center of the world, Times Square, New York, and you have like a little house that hosts, I remember, some kind of like a video store of like a, you know, erotic movies and erotic novels and stuff like that. So like it was just a, you know, it was like a mind, it was like a cognitive dissonance, if you can call it like that, because, you know, you can say like this is like the primest area in New York. I remember seeing this picture of like 1945 celebration of the victory in the World War II over Germany. People like in New York and Times Square, like millions and myriads of people. And then like when I came in, like it was the same area, like a full of this, like, you know, all kinds of like crazy businesses that just kind of like a mom and pop shops, like erotic video stores, prostitutes walking on the streets. Like it was strange, very, very strange, but also very inspiring.
So they had a lot of triple X stores in New York in the 90s, and then now not so much anymore.
There is nothing at all. Yeah,
Are there any blockbusters?
Nothing like that. No.
No. Yeah. So, were you ever? What was it called? What would it be like? What would be the terminology? I don't want to be too dirty. Like propositioned by a prostitute when you're just walking on the street.
No.
Nope.
No, I was not. No. But
You
I
never
saw
went.
them like standing on the corners and stuff like that. It was like a 42nd Street. Like, so,
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting that then for about maybe 5 years in 19 like 11 to like a 2011 to the 2017, I was working for Bank of Montreal.
Yeah.
And my office was right on Times Square, in the places where I was just walking, like when I just arrived. And my path to go home was to go on the 42nd Street, exactly in the areas where all these like triple X stores was standing.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it was just very, very, you know, surreal to just kind of like sometimes I was thinking, wow, there was like a public art areas. There's like a little bit of an area where you can sit and, you know, have lunch and, you know, just a public kind of like a situation where you have like a public display area. There were a lot of this like a skyscraper buildings, some beautiful restaurants, beautiful, you know, hotels. Knickerbocker Hotel is one of them that just kind of built on the corner right there where there was like a big triple X store, I remember, was standing. So yeah, it was it was interesting.
Well, were you making art, creating when you were working at the bank, working for the Bank of Montreal?
So interestingly, so my inspiration to create art came about like 2000. I want to say 2000. I would like to say 2010,
Mm-hmm.
2009. So I'm in finance. I'm like in finance. I'm working in the bank for about 20 years. So I would sit and I would just like doodle on the meetings. Like I would doodle, here and there, and it would just become so elaborate sometimes. I would have like doodles all over, like big pages, basically, because some of the meetings were just boring. Some of the meetings were just, you have to sit there, just kind of to listen, be like a fly on the wall, and I would just like draw on that. So I remember just kind of some people would tell me, "Wow, you should just kind of look at that and you should just kind of blow it out and just like put it on the wall. Maybe it would be cool." And it was like all abstract patterns. I don't know what I was drawing. I was just kind of like drawing like all over the place. If I look at your beautiful crocodile painting, but imagine if you just covered it like with different, all kinds of like, left and right, back and forth. Like it was very, very abstract, but some shapes were, visible. And I would just spend maybe like an hour just kind of saying, okay, what did I drew? What did I drew here?
Yeah.
And I would ask some people, I would turn it around and people say, oh, this looks like that. And this looks like that. This looks like a building. It looks like a little kind of an animal. And, so I started like, wow, I should just kind of try to, to kind of print it and put it on the wall and see how it looks. And that's how I kind of started. But then it was interesting that what happened is that I was working for Toronto Dominion Bank, TD, the office was right on 53rd Street and 5th Avenue, right in the heart of Manhattan, basically, Midtown. And across the street was the Museum of Modern Art. And Museum of Modern Art started by, Peggy Guggenheim and the whole Guggenheim family. They acquired a lot of, art throughout the centuries and had a lot of the most influential critics write about that. And then in the 90s, they hired this, critics around the world to publicize and say what were the most influential works of art ever in the world of the 20th century. And it just turned out to be that Picasso's Demoiselles d'Avignon, Ladies of d'Avignon, Matisse's Red Studio were in the Museum of Modern Art. So I would just like spend hours in that museum. I was just bored. So I was just drawing at the time, like just all kind of doodling on the meetings. I was just thinking about what could I do with that. And I would go to that museum. And then 2014, there was this exhibition of Jeff Koons. So Jeff Koons exhibition in the Whitney Museum of Art in New York. So Whitney Museum at that time was in Midtown, roughly about 70th Street, near the Museum of, Metropolitan Museum of Art. Yeah. Now it's actually in like a Meatpacking district, like in the new building that was just built out, and it was great. It's now so beautiful and contemporary. But at that time, it was like a reasonably like a small building. There were about like 5 floors, and there was a closing exhibition of that museum. Whitney Museum, before it moves to a different location, Jeff Koons took all over, just the whole museum. And I went there to that museum, and I was just going through some kind of like a midlife crisis. My personal life was going through some kind of like a difficult stages. So, and I learned Jeff Koons was a financial guy, bond trader, commodities trader before he became an artist. And he worked in Museum of Modern Art for about 3 years, selling memberships, basically. So I was in that museum almost like 3 times a week because I was working across the street and I had a corporate membership. I would go there for free, basically.
Did you go there for like lunches or something?
Yeah, I would go there for lunches. There was a restaurant as well. So I would just have a lunch there. I would bring my friends because for my corporate membership would allow me to bring 4 people. Oh, wow. I would invite sometimes, my friends who were working nearby. So like it was like I saw for example, I saw this, like, Mademoiselle d'Avignon, like by Picasso, this painting, maybe like, hundreds of times. And I would just sit and just stand there for hours and I digged up history on every painting in that museum. I digged up history on, on Rothko, on Matisse, on Picasso, on all of them. But then once I kind of like learned about Jeff Koons, it just intrigued me. It intrigued me so much because I was at that time going through some midlife crisis situation. I was doodling a lot. Some people were telling me, oh, you should take your doodles and just kind of publish it and, maybe put it on the wall. I learned that Jeff Koons was also a finance guy. And
was
also
banking not doing it for you?
Huh?
Was banking was banking not enjoyable for you?
It was a little bit boring, I want to say. Yeah, I would like to say it was a little bit boring.
You were doodling in the meeting, so
yeah.
You were making some. As you were stating, you were doodling massive amounts of work in these meetings, which probably says something. Yeah.
Yeah, I have like hundreds of doodles from that time and from like later time. I continue to do. I still do that basically. Yeah, but so it was just and I'm sort of like, wow. I should try to make art and just use it as the way to get out of the midlife crisis. And I tried to do that. And then I just had like, but you have to have like you starting out, the first thing you have to do is just to make an exhibition in Chelsea, right? Because Chelsea is like a center of New York art. So I hired this gallery called Agora Gallery. And I had my exhibition at Agora Gallery. They actually they're charging for people to display their art. I learned that it's very, very there's a lot of artists who wants to display their art in New York. Even so, New York is a center of contemporary art, but there's like a lot of artists, like not unlike like in other times.
A lot of competition in New York.
A lot of competition, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but still, it was worth it. I remember, like, I had like my first exhibition. I had my friends coming up, and it was great. I remember I was feeling a real joy. I did not sell anything. It cost me a lot of money to display it in Chelsea, but I definitely felt a lot of joy. Actually, it was worth it. Basically, it's like some people, I cannot draw parallels to that, but for some reason, like, it just kind of reminds me, I like thinking about situations in parallel. So like later on, I acquired a taste of just painting biblical works, biblical situations. So I had to learn a lot of history, biblical history, right? Because Bible is the relationship between humanity and God, but also a history, just a regular history, right? So it just tells like who was the king, who acquired whom, who fought whom and stuff like that. So it was like very, very inspirational. So there was this situation about the book of Revelations. Book of Revelation is the last book of the Bible. And technically it's written about the Jewish revolt. So there was a Jewish revolt of 68 to 71, post the CE, right? So 68 to 71, when Roman Empire was of the control of the Judea and Israel, and then Jews kind of rose up, and they actually lost this war basically, right? So they lost everything, and they were kind of disseminated for 2,000 years. And like I've read like some accounts of that. And they were saying that, was it worth it? Was it worth to start a war, start a rebellion that you're going to lose, basically? And you lost it for 2,000 years. There were different accounts. Some people say, no, it was not worth it. Maybe they shouldn't have done it. But I think for some reason, the parallel that I have was basically with my situation, where I'm not exactly, but I'm just saying, like, when you do something knowing that you're not going to succeed, So it was my first exhibition ever when I paid like a lot of money to this gallery to showcase my new art. I was just new emerging artist. I did not sell anything. But I had a chance to take a lot of videos, a lot of photos,
Yeah.
interviews. That was still worth it, basically.
Well, the interesting thing about that is you're going to pay either at the front end or the back end of the whole of the process, you know. Like
Yes.
you're either gonna if you're at like an art fair or art show where you buy it, you have a tent and you display your work, you're gonna pay to enter that place, to enter that art fair. You're gonna pay for the rental space or whatever. You might have to pay for the tent space, or if you're at a gallery, you're gonna pay in the backside where they take out a huge percentage of your sales. So
Yes.
like there's this disconnect with that where like, oh well, I'm paying money at the front so I can display my work, but in general you do pay in some form or another, whether you like it or not. It could be you pay with time, which is just as valuable, or you pay to basically rent out a space, or you pay to sell your work after the fact.
Agreed. Absolutely. I mean, I guess when you pay the percentage of your sales, at least you have these people. They are saying, okay, this guy is just worth something, so we're going to take him. We're going to take our own risk on that, right?
Yeah.
Because they're paying rent and stuff like that. So, but when you have like a vanity gallery, what's called, which I took first, but for me it was still worth it. And some people make a lot of sales from that gallery as well, like Agora Gallery. It was still great because I was just kind of testing the waters, and they wrote a couple of articles about me, and I kind of thought that, okay, every artist should come up with his own style. So Picasso came up with the Cubism. Matisse was the creator of another art style called and I forgot about it. So the new art, the art style that Matisse created was Fauvism, right? Now, like Roy Lichtenstein, Andy Warhol, and a bunch of others, pop art. And so I think to make it as an artist, you have to come up with your own art style. So for me, hiring this gallery was still worth it because I was kind of by bouncing my ideas with them, and I was just reading a lot about art and a lot of history of art. I'm actually, I think like I've met a lot of artists throughout my about like 8 years of my art career, and a lot of them say that the real value of the art school is the history of art. Mm-hmm. So people who study history of art really stand out quite significantly, comparing to other artists who just kind of want to come up with their own thing, because at least what has been developed. But history of art you can learn from YouTube as well. There's a lot of art lectures, documentaries. So I remember I was working in this in the bank called Royal Bank of Scotland in Connecticut, Stamford, Connecticut. So it would take me like about 1.5 to 2 hours to drive. And I would just listen to, all kinds of, music and, some movies and stuff like that. But I got bored, and I said, like, what can I do? And then I learned, wow, but there are documentaries. So there are documentaries about the history of art, the history of music, but also documentaries about Bible. So that's why I acquired a taste for just learning about Bible, basically, right? So I would read it. I would then listen to people talking about it. I would listen to documentaries. So I would be driving in the car, and I would be like in my, on my telephone. It would be going and just talking about this, like some commentators, some people, like there was like a professionally done documentaries, and there was just kind of individual, like a priests or pastors or Jewish rabbis were talking about it, and I was just like acquired all of it, and I was just kind of trying to interpret it, So it was like a lot of like an interesting kind of, hours like that I went. So like the commute for 2 hours all of a sudden became not a burden, but a great time to just, expand my horizons, my understanding, my artistic sensibilities. And it was just, and at that time I had this, first exhibition. So it was kind of like, and that's why, so for some reason, I acquired the taste for biblical stories. I was fascinated by it. And of course, I learned that, the history of art through the 13th and 14th centuries is very much about illiterate people for whom artists had a profound task to educate them, right? So like they could not read the Bible. Bible was not translated into English, for example, right? The King James version was like a 16th century translation. And that was like one of the first translation from the Aramaic and Hebrew. I'm not talking about like even a Russian translation of the Bible was like in the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, and different other area so the biblical knowledge, the biblical texts were only translated like later, in many centuries later, when after they were written. So like the artist idea, like for example Giotto, right? Like the 13th century Giotto was about just kind of educating people about what happened, basically, right? So people would come to the church and they would see the paintings, they would learn about what happened actually. So there was the Jesus Christ, there was Mary Magdalene, there was a betrayal. I visit a lot of those areas and a lot of those historical places and historical churches later on. But when I was learning, when I was going to this Royal Bank of Scotland for 2-hour drive, it would be like the best time of my day. I would have to take 2 hours of driving and listening to a particular documentary about a particular book of the Bible or a particular artist who would paint, and some of them and a lot of them were just painting about, biblical stories, basically.
Was it a 4-hour commute?
It was like a 4-hour commute.
Total, back and forth?
Total, yeah. So it was a 3 to 4. Yes, 3 to 4. Mm-hmm.
So you were going through a lot of podcasts and audiobooks.
Hours and hours, absolutely.
You were probably going through like one every 2 days. If the average book was, or average podcast or audiobook was 4 hours, 8 hours.
Some of them, yes, but some of them, well, usually it's like about an hour. An hour and a half, maybe. Woo. Yeah. So it was it was 2 per day, basically, right? One way, one, and the other one was the, going back.
So that was probably the most valuable part of your day.
Absolutely. It was just it was painfully to drive, but it was just a great, just the stuff I was learning. And that's how I acquired this taste for just reading Bible and just kind of comparing and, and just reinterpreting it and acquiring different questions that I'm still asking in my art and in my just kind of, I'm still reading that Bible. I have Bible, on my night table before I go to sleep. Sometimes I take it. I'm more inclined to just listen to the documentaries and just, people talking about it and just asking questions, and I reinterpret, and I think a lot about that as well. But just this relationship between humanity and God just fascinates me. For some reason, I found, I believe, my calling. I believe I found my, I've been painting for about 8 years now, and majority of that work is the biblical stories, biblical works of art.
What's one of your favorite stories?
So that's a very great question. I have a lot. The Bible is a very, very, it's about 69 books, I believe, including the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. Then there are prophets. Then there's a New Testament, that was written by the, post Jesus time, right, when Jesus was born. So my favorite story is just there's a story about how Jewish people were, how the Israel was foreordained to go for 40 years in the desert, right? So that's my favorite story. So, and the favorite story, and the reason for that favorite story is because I just cannot comprehend how that story could possibly emerge, right?
Mhm.
Because, I mean, and I mean, so like just kind of to remind you, right? So this whole situation is that, so Moses comes back, he asks Pharaoh, he meets God in the place of the burning bush. Then he goes to Pharaoh and asks, let my people go, on many different occasions. And he puts 10 plagues, like Most High puts 10 plagues on the Pharaoh to convince him to let the Jewish people go, to relinquish them from being slaves in Egypt, right? And so then people come to the, Mount Sinai, they receive commandments, they build the golden calf. Moses comes back, he breaks the commandments, he comes back again. So there's like whole dramatic situation. But then finally, right, after wandering in the desert for about a year, after witnessing 10 plagues that God, like exposed to the Egyptians to convince the Pharaoh to let them go, after God, fed them, protected them from the snakes, from the wild beasts, gave them water and stuff like that, they are on the banks of the river Jordan, and they send the spies to the land of Israel, to the promised land, to the land of milk and honey, to do the spying mission, basically, to understand what's going on, basically, right? And when these spies come back, 10 out of 12 say, no, we cannot go back. Sorry. Look how, so they bring these huge grapes. They bring like samples of the grapes, sample of the fruits, and say, look at how these people are. They are basically, look how they're big, they're strong, their buildings are like very, very strong. Their cities are fortified with huge walls. Going there would be a suicide mission. So that is after, for like a year, God protected them and fed them. So, and then Moses basically kind of tells them, listen, but can you understand that God is behind us? He will go as a consuming fire. He will consume your enemies will be consumed. But you have to go and do it yourself. You have to take your fate in your own hands, right? At some point, you have to stop being a child, stop being somebody who is being rescued by God or rescued by anybody, right? And you have to take your fate into your own hands and go and conquer this land. You have to do it, but God still will be on your, He will support you. He will, like, I remember there was a quote, like, as a consuming fire, He will go and consume your enemies. So, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and they still say no. And God, of course, is, infuriated, and, He's, because, so, and He says, okay, like, so, that's how I learned that, like, people can waste their lives and it'll be okay. If somebody wants to go and waste their life for nothing, like, and put it, into like, devote it to some kind of like a, not important causes, or just like even waste it, basically, succumb to drugs and, like all kinds of, actions that are not, positive, or not bringing the situation to the, not, adding to the development of the world, not adding to the, like, a progress of the world, not contributing to the, just kind of like a, development of the thought or ideas of the world, it would be fine. So I was like, so then that's how I answered my, like, I was thinking, like, how could it be possible? Like, a lot of the people asking, like, how would it be possible that some people just wasting their life, they are born for great things and they just kind of like wasting their life, they are suffering, they are,
What are your thoughts on that?
Huh?
What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's, this concept of the free will, that allows us to either devote our life to something grand and something interesting, something something meaningful.
Yeah.
But also it would also allow us to just kind of like I remember there was a movie, I forgot the name of that movie, and there was two characters like talking about the situation, just kind of like a meaning of life.
Yeah.
And the one character was saying, there is nothing more pleasant than aimlessly wasting your life and devoting it to some kind of like a not very important, just like a wasted causes. That's the most pleasant thing in life. So it gives you a great pleasure by just kind of waking up late, not reading a lot, just kind of like just kind of like a devoting your life to something pleasurable immediately, not developing yourself, not exercising, not trying to achieve something grand, not trying to contribute. So so the idea is that you can just kind of completely like just waste your life, and that's fine.
Do you think that far too many people are participating in that aimlessness?
I believe so.
What do you think people could do about that? Like what could they do?
So first of all, they'll have to want to do something, right? That's what I kind of learned from that story. They'll have to want to do something.
Yeah.
And how can you want to do something? You there was this like a concept, right? That you're not facing in your life the problems and the obstacles that people are facing in their lives are not something that they can conquer. Meaning that regardless of the complexity and the painfulness and the kind of just the bitterness of the situation, any problems in life of each individual are something to basically so we have power to conquer that, we have power to overcome that. Yeah. Right? We just have to start wanting to do that, right? And I just kind of wasn't sure about that. I was just like, wow, like how is it possible? Some people diagnosed with like horrible mortal disease, and some people are just going through some kind of horrible situations, losing loved ones, losing jobs, losing money, inability to support themselves and stuff like that. But then I kind of like realized that it's basically it's like the attitude you take. But then again, like I'm still thinking about what is the incentive, right? Incentive, for example, how do you lose weight, for example, right? Like, we are just kind of the whole philosophy of just like, so Nietzsche was talking about like the God is dead, right? So this whole kind of the statement of Nietzsche. So like some people misinterpret it, but the idea that he was concerned that the fact that the 20th century and the 20th century he was living in, people kind of lost respect for religion, lost respect for the ideas that are basically taught as part of the biblical stories and the Bible itself, and in any religion whatsoever. So like they kind of were trying to rebuild. So there was this vacuum, there was like emptiness that had to be fulfilled. And the idea is that, right, so the idea was that maybe in the 20th century we would give up these old ideas of the Bible that were taught like in dogmas, and some people say old ideas, Jewish fairy tales, like this guy Bill Maher is calling them, right? So and then you build up your own thing, you build up your own religion. So this whole new age situation is about that. But then if you, let's say, you set out to lose weight or you set out to exercise, how can you do that? I mean, can you just can you just like sit there on the couch and just like eat and and watch a TV, watch movies every day, and then all of a sudden become I'm gonna just go and just start exercising every day and building up my body. And I've done it basically, right? So I actually started like doing exercises about like 3 years ago, and I've achieved some success of that. And now I just cannot really, I mean, I cannot imagine myself being without it. So like every day I have to exercise, right? So once you learn, but you have to learn, you have to acquire the taste for it, right? Somebody has to tell you to do that. Somebody has to like teach you to do it. Maybe you have to acquire it yourself. So I'm still not sure about how do you motivate people to do that. But I think what I realize is that somehow some people take different problems in a different way. Some people become depressed and cannot do anything about it, and some people just start just swimming around and just like become optimistic about that and just like start doing all kinds of things basically, right? And that's how I just I don't know, like I'm still kind of thinking about that conundrum, Matt, but I'm not sure about that actually. Like I know, I mean, I want to motivate people to just kind of think about it and like think about greatness, think about achieving something, trying to do art, but then like that's kind of like too far, right? All you have to do is just kind of start doodling basically, right? There's a lot of these different programs. You start doodling, you start writing something, start expressing something. Maybe you start exercising, maybe just a little bit basically, right? But then once you acquire the taste, it's completely different transformation. But you have to acquire the taste of it. You have to see the result. And the result comes in usually in anything in life, I think, right? Maybe some people are talented and, genius. And once they start doing it, they realize that, this is what they do. And they are so happy and they are so skilled at particular, like a trait or a particular, like a business or something like that. But usually once you start doing that and you don't think about the result, you kind of start drawing, for example, you start, doodling, you start kind of trying to perceive things, you start to, to write about stuff, you start to kind of express your emotions. If it's part, you just have to take it like one day at a time and one step at a time, right? You agree? Would you agree?
Yes. Like the notion of motivation, motivating yourself. That's tricky, right? I was talking to you about this earlier. Like you want to model your behavior. I was saying this earlier, where like I'm trying to model my behavior about with what I'm saying with my words, right? And so like whenever you say things either out loud or subconsciously, in your head,
yes,
those compound. Actually, I think there's some science with it. I believe like if you think it, it's not as bad as if you say it out loud. So like if you say I suck, your subconscious hears that more vividly and actually tries to manifest it, right? So like
agreed.
And then you start modeling, you're like, well, I suck, I'm terrible at this, and then your mind subconsciously starts to believe that, and guess what, lo and behold, you start sucking at it and you're terrible at it, because you've basically prophesized it in a sense, right? I also it also has to go with goal setting, modeling your behavior, setting up habits. There's a lot of things, motivations, like to motivate someone to do something. That's tricky, right? You got to have not like, you don't have to have inspiration, but you got to have a goal that is so ridiculous that you got to keep saying it. Like it's such a ridiculous goal. Like someone who's saying, "Oh, I want to have 5 million TikTok followers." That, like you say that to someone that doesn't register that. They don't register that, but you keep saying, like, I want to have 5 million TikTok followers. I want to have 5 million TikTok followers. And then you say that, and all of a sudden you start doing stuff that puts you in a direction that might get you that, right? Might get you towards that goal. That's just a silly little goal. Like, that's not my goal. I'm just something that's like an example.
Yes.
But like, you'll hear from other people who will talk negatively about that. They'll say that's impossible. And you don't. I listen to a lot of people saying, like, you don't want to listen to other people's worldview because that's them trying to bring you into their worldview. So, like, if they say that's impossible and you believe it, you're not going to ever achieve having 5 million TikTok followers or whatever, right? So
right.
you gotta bring them into your worldview into that type of belief, saying, like, oh yeah, this guy might have the ability to get that many followers, you know. And it's like you have to have like a little bit of self-awareness, a little bit of not like being conceited, but self-confidence. You gotta be proud of your accomplishment, no matter how small they are, you know, micro accomplishments, you know, steady. Like it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
True. Right.
You know,
you have to look just every day doing something to get to the goal, a little bit closer to that goal, basically.
yeah,
right?
I do agree that there is a little bit of aimlessness going on in the world with the average individual, and I think the culture has made it appear that they don't have the ability to do that, to grasp some of their achievements or goals that they want. You know, I know a lot of people that want to be writers, but other people's worldviews are skewing what they want to do. You know, making it like they're acquiescing to other people's worldviews, saying, "Oh, I can't be a writer. This person doesn't believe into me. So why should I believe in myself?" Well, you got to believe in yourself first before someone else is going to believe into you.
Right. And maybe, I mean, you just don't even think about it. You just kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna do it. I mean, I'm just gonna do it. That's all, basically, right? I mean, who cares, right?
It's habits.
Yeah, it's just a habit. You just develop a habit of, like, you know, I remember this guy, Jerry Seinfeld, right?
Yes.
Jerry Seinfeld, I think it was. Like, it was a great story. Like, he remember, like he would say, like, you have to write a joke every day, and every time you write it, you kind of square it, basically, right? You kind of square it, like, so you put like a little calendar in front of you, and every time you write it, you kind of square it, and then once upon a time you achieve, let's say, 20 days when you wrote a joke. And he said, like, well, then you just want to continue doing that, and you keep it like 21, 22, 23. And I was trying actually to apply it, like, for some time for my art as well, right? So I would just do like a painting every day, inspired by this guy Beeple, of course, right? So this Beeple guy did like about 13 years of like a digital art and stuff, but many other, like, you know, but just kind of, this one is just much more publicized recently. But you have to do every day something, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to. Sometimes I would do it, right? But then sometimes I would just not do it. Sometimes I was like, okay, I'll lose my, you know, I would take like a week or two off. Like, so, I mean, it's all kind of great. You just have to kind of still, you know, express things. I mean, sometimes inspiration comes about something, you know, it's not like you have to kind of, I mean, at some point, I guess you develop it as a muscle, as a job, basically, right?
It is a muscle. The habit of production is a muscle, and it gets easier to initiate when you do it over and over again. Like, it becomes less of a burden, less friction is involved, less of your subconscious kind of saying, no, you don't want to do this.
Yeah, like, why would you do that, right? I mean, like, who cares about that? Like, who are you to say something to the world? But you say, like, no, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah, I heard that Jerry Seinfeld story, where he wrote a joke a day, and he would make an X on his calendar, and pretty soon he had a ton of X's, and he'd find out he would get really bummed out if he didn't see an X there. You know?
Yes.
And
it's kind of like the same thing I feel. I mean, I'm more so about like exercises like that. I'm more kind of consistent in that way about exercising, right? So once I started doing like a like a weightlifting basically, right? And just kind of I developed this high interval stress training where you do like body exercises without weights or without any equipment whatsoever, just using the body weight. Like if I lose a day without even a small exercise, I feel like for some reason I feel anxious basically. So right now I
feel cruddy.
Yeah.
There was a this documentary called Super Size Me. Have you heard of it? Have you seen it?
Yes, absolutely.
Where the guy was he was eating McDonald's every day, and then like after a while he for one he missed like a meal of McDonald's, and like he said he just felt like terrible.
Yeah.
Because he missed that meal, and like his body was craving it almost, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
And but yeah, you do feel cruddy. And I don't really know. I agree with you. I don't know of a way to motivate an individual. Like it has to come from the self. Me personally, and I don't know if you can understand this, but like me personally, it's got to be like a ridiculous goal, like a ridiculous claim, and you just got so ridiculous that it's a goal that like is like a mountain, like you're at the top of the beginning of the hill, and you're at the mountains all the way up there, and the goal so like the top of Mount Everest. So it's got to be like a ridiculous goal, and you just got to keep going for it. You know, I don't know, like that. I thought about the whole baby step premise where like, oh, I'm going to do this, try to get this, where I want to make it so I do this amount of things, or I want to achieve this small goal. But I thought like that's not challenging enough. It's got to be a kind of a difficult goal.
I would agree. I would totally agree with you. Actually,
that's a
great idea.
Hello, it's not like doing like, oh, I want to do 5 minutes of drawing every week. No, it's got to be like, I want to do 5 hours of drawing a week. You know, something that's like, you got to devote some time toward it. You know. And so,
yeah,
what are your thoughts besides, like, do you have any possible solutions to having like any like advice for the viewer on how they can make their dent in the world? Like I heard this quote, like this person was saying, like, I think everyone should strive to make a dent in the world, even if it's a small one, you know?
Right. So, it's kind of a combination of, I would say it's a combination of being just totally humble, but also the highest form of narcissism kind of mixed together, if I'm thinking about it. Like because like when I draw something and it's not perfect, I could draw my stuff over and over again and add stuff, but at some point, like for example, right? I mean, I'm talking about the drawing, for example, right? Because when you put your painting into the world, you see like, here it is, take a look, people. And some people like it, some people don't. But at some point, it's a reflection of your like perception, your personality, your world of view, basically. And you're saying like, and some people are just like perfectionists, basically, right? So they have to say like, oh, like what can I say? What can I do that would be important to the world? Who am I to share anything with the world? So to influence the people. But I'm thinking like how. Like every time I put up a painting, I want to fix it. I want to just like add some stuff to it. And like, I mean, it gives me like just immense pleasure, let's say, to publish my artwork. But also it gives me a little bit of a pain, and sometimes a lot of pain, to just kind of like realize that what I'm painting, what I'm just sharing, is not perfect. It's just like way not perfect. And I continue work sometimes, basically, right? So, but then like, what is my motivation, basically? What is like motivation to do that, right? So just kind of like this, like, I mean, I feel that there is like there is a goal in life for everybody. Like, we're not born into this world originally to waste our life. Although the story of the, Israel wandering, 40 years in the desert, and the entire generation dying because they refused to go into the promised land, tells me that, yes, there is totally a situation where people just want to waste their life, and it's possible to do it, and it would be fine, right? I mean, not not everybody has to conquer, the skies, or fly into the, to the space or whatever, or do something grand about life. So I'm still kind of conflicting about it, but I feel it's more like, okay, if I have two choices, like, why wouldn't I choose the choice that would, bring something to the world, that would just, help me to like me more, that would just, teach me some skills, maybe, that would maybe, like, my humble existence maybe would be, maybe beneficial to somebody, if I, dare to say that, basically, right? Yeah. Or, like, I don't know what my motivation, like, I'm just kind of I'm just doing it, basically. I just have to do it, basically. I'm just doing it, like, I'm continuing doing it, like, I'm painting it, and I'm just, I just want to witness, like, I sometimes, for example, I see these documentaries about, like, Salvador Dali and like Roy Lichtenstein, my favorite artist, Roy Lichtenstein, actually.
You like him?
I love him. Yeah, I think he's probably he's my favorite artist, I want to say. My conceptivism that I'm painting emerged from a lot of different influences, but his was, like, very much an important one, because his idea was just, you show a representation of a particular situation, or a or a painting painted by a human hand,
mm-hmm.
but appearing to be industrialized, basically, right? So those, like, dots and representation of reality, industrialized. Where I took it, like, to the next level, and I said, I want to paint stuff and reality with digital tools, but make it look as if it's painted by the human hand, basically. So he wanted computers to, not computers, I guess, but, like, more like he wanted a human hand painting, showing the reality in industrialized kind of a perception. Many different others as well, but that's one of the ideas that I loved about his work. And I'm trying to kind of see that the computers are industrialized methods are used to paint reality that appears to be a human hand. And I'm very fascinated sometimes when people tell me, oh, this painting looks like if it's written, like, by aquarelle, or maybe, like, by acrylic, or, and I'm like, no, it's a digital art. It's a digital computer process. It's a generation. It's a process that generates imagery, and I'm choosing it, and I'm just, using it, like, for my for representation of reality. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So what is the motivation? Like, I'm still thinking about motivation. I'd rather, like, it's like you live, for example, in New York, Matt, right? You live in New York, and there are hundreds of different exhibitions going on in New York every day, right? So, like, is it better to just sit at home or to go to the exhibition? And I'm just choosing going to the exhibition every day, every time, right? Sometimes I like to go to the beach when I'm in the summer, but, for example, just in general, right? It's always better to do something than not do something. That's how I see it, basically, right? So some people don't care about it. Some of my friends just don't understand it. It's like, well, it's much better to just sit at home, watch a movie, watch like a soccer game, or like a hockey game. Islanders are going on right now, playing in the NHL, like a conference finals. It's great. Some people just like, I'm fascinated by it as well, but still, like, it's just so much to see. But, and there's this like a whole graph about once you kind of develop a taste for something, it goes like, the kind of, the more time you spend, the more knowledge you get about something. So it goes like to the higher end, and you think you know everything about that is about it, right?
Yeah.
Then you realize that you know nothing. You only get a little bit of a tip of that iceberg. So it goes like to the bottom, and you say like, oh, the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know about it, right? How much more I have to learn about it.
Yeah.
And only with the time you kind of go, right? It's kind of like,
gosh, I feel like that right now.
every time, every day. I agree completely. Like, that's how I feel about everything like that. But that kind of gives me, like, I remember driving in that, like a Royal Bank of Scotland, Stamford, Connecticut location, 2 hours. I was just like, every day the drive was just, I mean, sometimes I remember it was like a horrible, I have to drive for 2 hours. But then once I learned about these documentaries and about these videos and, and stories, it would be like, oh my God, that's the best part of my day, basically, right? So I would just be, I would like, just I'm going to just do this like in the next like hour or so. And it was just a great, great feeling.
I bet you had something to talk about at work, though.
True. Yeah, absolutely. A cocktail party conversation. Absolutely. Yeah. You would
Hey,
go,
you know what I learned today? Like, what? Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Sergey's going to tell us something. So it sounds that you have some habits established with your workflow, right?
Right.
And what are those? What's like your day like? Like what are your can't miss like hourly things that you're going to do at a certain time?
So I wake up very early, and
How early?
usually about 6 a.m. Right? It's about 6 a.m. I must have exercises, like, so I do like a physical, like, like a push-ups or weightlifting, or like a high interval stress training. Like, I have like I have weights in my apartment, basically, and I love exposing it. I love just not going to the gym. I mean, gym gives you a great kind of acceleration, right? Because with weights you can do like a 4 or 5 iterations, and you are like, you maxed out, basically, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how you grow your muscles, for example. But then with your own weight, you can just manipulate it, and it gives you this great it gives me a great pleasure that you can do it anywhere you are and anytime. So I would just like, sometimes I just go on the street and I go and start doing push-ups or some exercises. But no, back to your question. So I would wake up at 6 o'clock. I do exercise. I paint. I always paint in the morning. I love painting in the morning, basically.
You paint first or you exercise first?
First, exercise first.
And how long do you paint?
I paint for about an hour, basically. I paint for about, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour, but I have to paint something, basically.
Do you do actual painting, or is it digital work?
No, I take like my handheld device.
Okay, so you
play with basically, yeah.
Okay.
And I have like I'm a huge fan of this, like it's called Samsung, right?
Procreate, Krita, Sketchbook Pro.
And like I'm starting to paint, basically, right? Okay. So either I draw a painting on the like a piece of paper, and then I take a photograph and I start manipulating it in a digital editor.
Okay.
Or I do it in a digital editor, or maybe I take a photograph, I bring it back, and I just kind of do all kinds of filtering and then like paint on top of that, and then so a different kind of things. But I have to do something about that. And then
about now.
Yeah. And then I just I sometimes like often I meditate. I try to kind of achieve some kind of different feelings. So I try to picture a certain situation that I want to be in. for example, my dream, right? Like this goes back to your idea that you have to go for something crazy and just kind of like a monumental, right, in your goal. So my dream is that I want to have my art all over New York City displayed in public spaces. So I picture myself, for example, giving a speech at the dedication of my art in New York City to some kind of a public space, basically, right? So, and I just try to feel the emotions I would feel at that time as if it already happened, basically, right? I try to kind of transform my reality. It gives me great pleasure to do that, basically. It gives me great pleasure. It's kind of, there are a couple of goals I have in life, like a couple of different.
It's like thoughts become things.
Thoughts become things, right? Transformation of reality. Exactly your point, where you have like a huge idea, huge goal, 5 million followers on TikTok, or having my art displayed on the central New York Times Square. Basically, I would sometimes even take like I would take like my art and I would paint it over as if it's already displayed, and I would just like show it on my Instagram page, basically. Just kind of like it's an ultimate form of maybe what's the word I'm looking for? Narcissism, basically, right? Because you want your art. I just want my art to be like there for the people. I mean, you have to think about the money as well. But then money, who cares about the money? I mean, no, you cannot say it. Who cares about the money? It's important to have the money and just to kind of like get maybe some sort of financial kind of right. But then the idea is that you want to have it like you just want people to see it. I just want my art to be seen by a lot of different people, as many as possible, basically, right? So that gives me a great pleasure to picturing and imagining in that kind of a situation. I pray a lot, so I would pray like for half an hour. I memorized some prayers, some psalms and stuff like that, and I just kind of repeat it, and I write it myself also sometimes. So that's kind of my morning, and it's my morning routine, basically.
So the meditation is kind of like I would listen to a lot and watch a lot of YouTubers and podcasters, and the premise of not like manifestation, or not like you're like, oh, I want $5 million, bling, right? No, that right, where it just pops in your hand, right? No, my understanding is, as I was been taught, I can't rephrase it any better. This is the best phrase I have right now. Is like you model your behavior with your words, or your thoughts.
Yes.
And I think that's like right now, like that's the best phrase I can come up, or like the best logical explanation for what I'm trying to project or to anyone or explain to anyone is when you are if you think you can't do it, you're not going to do it, or you think it's too hard, you're not going to do it. Like oh, I'm never going to be good at X, right? Or I'm never going to be good at painting, or I'm never going to be good at playing music. I'm never going to be good at writing. I'm never going to be able to run 5 miles or whatever, you know, and you will create that reality, right? And I think there's some truth to that,
Absolutely, I agree with you completely.
100%. Like you're if you're around a lot of negative people, you're not. You might be a negative person. You might not think positive thoughts. It's easier. It's actually, there's like some studies. There's some studies where like if you you will, I don't know, I forgot what I was going to say, but like I think the studies had to do with it's easier to your net default is easier for thinking negative thoughts than it is positive thoughts.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Yes.
Sergey, how long have you been painting?
For about 8 years now.
8 years? Eight
Yeah.
years?
So I can say like, I mean, like painting is like a, I'm not taking like Molbert or whatever, and like the glass. I mean, I do it like in my handheld device.
So creating art.
Creating
Okay.
art, basically, right?
Okay.
So, and I'm in finance. So I've I always thought, once I kind of started learning about the history of art, basically, right? I realized that every artist has to come up with his own or her own art style.
Yes.
I mean, it's good to be known to be the creator of a particular art style, right? So, and I came up with this word called Conceptivism, whereas basically I take, so one of the premise there is that there is this concept of portfolio optimization technique in finance. So what you take is like, let's say you take two different assets, and let's say it's a bond and a stock, right? And you put it into the portfolio. There is a formula that provides an optimum concentration of these two assets in your portfolio, whereas a risk of a particular asset, how much you can lose in a particular period of time with a certain degree of probability, and how much you can possibly gain. You're looking historically, like how much that asset performed throughout, let's say, 100 years or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So you say, okay, I know my risk, how much I can lose in a particular time with certain probability in a particular time frame, and I know how much I can gain. So there is like a formula of optimizing the concentrations of these assets in your portfolio, and it's called portfolio optimization technique, quantitative modeling it's called, basically, right, in finance. So I said, I want to try to apply the same thing in my art. Mm-hmm. So I've developed a couple of tools, but I also am using kind of like a couple of digital kind of tools that allow me to do that. So I take different combinations of photographs, my hand-drawn paintings, pictures, like different kind of visual representation I find on the internet or on the websites. I join them all together, and this program works and gives me different kind of images and different perception of a situation. And then I, being an artist, I choose a particular one, and I kind of I could iterate it for many different like times. And sometimes I do it sometimes I develop an image for about I think longest was a year, basically, right? So a year you would keep it doing one after the other, hundreds and hundreds of iterations. You take bits and pieces of that you like. Maybe you take a whole thing and you kind of chop it out and you kind of and join it together. So then that's how the creative process was. So I'm kind of I'm imagining I remember there was a revelational story about Raphael, right? So Raphael had one of the biggest workshops in Italy. Mm-hmm. Right, so he had many different apprentices who would work for him, same as Leonardo da Vinci, right? So they had this bunch of students who would be crazy to learn how to paint, how to represent reality, and they would teach them. So those students would do some bits and pieces of the paintings for them. Maybe they will do the whole painting, but the idea would be of the different artists. So modern technology allows you to do that as well, being an artist. But all of those apprentices, all of those people who are helping you are in this handheld device, basically, or in a computer program, or it's part of the digital design editors that you kind of use or you develop yourself, basically, as well. So you have this hundreds of people who could work for you, not people, I'm going to say, but it's a program that represents these people who used to help Leonardo and Raphael and a bunch of others. And they come back and they show you, okay, here is what they came up. Here's the idea. Do you like it? And you say, I like this bit and that bit. Let's chop it off and then, go back and do something else with the other thing. So they go back, they work for a little bit, they come back as well, And they say, so, and that kind of idea of the portfolio optimization is to come up with something called gesamtkunstwerk. It's not my idea. It's actually an idea developed by this guy, I forgot, this German musician, Wagner, of course, Wagner, right? So the ultimate form of art, right? So you come up with this idea, or like with some kind of like a work of art that's supposed to impose on your different feelings, on your visual stimulation, on your ears, your musical stimulation, and your kind of heart, right? So the story. So it's a story combining with music, with visual, with all kinds of other things that gives you the ultimate fascinating experience, right? So this Gesamtkunstwerk, and that's what I'm trying to do with my art as well. I'm trying to using the digital tools to basically come up with the form that will just be presented to the people, and what people will just experience some sort of a euphoria.
How many iterations of one work do you usually have?
I have like hundreds, and sometimes
of like one work per
one work, basically, right?
And do you keep each one, or do they get deleted and you just keep the final one?
I keep usually the final one. They not get deleted because they all kind of on my hard drive, but
Okay.
I keep them all basically, and I do this whole new NFT market, and you probably heard of them, like non-digital, non-fungible tokens, NFTs, right? That makes like this millions of dollars digital work. So I kind of try to show the progression, right? So this is how I start, and that's how it leads to this final work of art that I choose, basically.
Do you have any NFTs?
I do. Yeah, I do. I have an account on OpenSea. I have an account on Mintable. I try to kind of...
Mintable? Is that M-I-N-T-A, Mintable, and OpenSea?
Yes.
I don't know a lot. I don't know a lot about NFTs. I actually have I'm having a person come in later, like a couple months later. He's going to basically talk about NFTs in its entirety, or supposedly that's going to be his subject. But what are your thoughts on NFTs?
Well, it's interesting. So the idea is that basically, right, you have a recording. It's just a means of recording your work of art.
Yeah.
You record it on a blockchain, and it's supposedly held for forever, basically, right? Until the blockchain is in existence, it's held forever. You know exactly the provenance of that. You know who created it. You have the supposedly royalties from the resale. That's a revolutionary concept. When you sell somebody your work, and then that somebody sells that work to somebody else, you get 10% or whatever is the percentage of that through the NFT. That's great. Supposedly, it's actually working fine. I mean, there is actually, I don't think there are mechanisms to enforce it yet, but it's still some cool ideas about that, right?
Well,
but then
you should be able to know the previous owner of it, right?
That's true, right?
Because the blockchain.
Yeah, it's a blockchain. You know exactly who bought this work initially, who created it, how much they paid. You can have like all of that great, interesting information. But what I'm kind of finding is that this whole idea of being an artist in the contemporary world is just a kind of a new way of packaging it, basically, right?
Yeah.
So you're still the creative force, right? You have to come up with something. You have to kind of paint or draw or create something. But then instead of just, I'm going to show my exhibition at the gallery, you say, I'm going to do my drop, right, in this particular website. So you just kind of, you just put like a packaging of that to the different perspective, right? You put like a different wording for that. And it's a great marketing tool, basically, right? You just kind of like, oh, we are so far away from just like showing, the like showing in the gallery. No, it's not an opening in the gallery. It's a drop on, OpenSea or something like that. So it's a kind of play like of the words and like play of the concepts and stuff, and it's very, very cool and it's interesting. So I'm thinking about how you can come up even with a new one, basically. But it's interesting. It's interesting that somebody, you know, could do that and could record it, and especially that, you know, I'm doing this digital. My work, originally it's digital work, basically, right? So when I publish it, it's digital. So I could register it on blockchain, and I do register it basically. I'm just I had my drop on OpenSea recently, about like a few months ago. And it's you know, it's been interesting. Like I you know, it's interesting to announce to the people, oh, it's so great, and you kind of, you know, you are embracing this new contemporary ideas and developments, and it's great to be at that forefront and, you know, be like, you know, participating in that, and it makes me feel cool, actually.
Do you own any cryptocurrency?
I do, yeah.
How
own,
many Bitcoins do you have?
I don't have a lot. I have like Ethereum, basically, right?
You have Ethereum?
I have Ethereum, yeah.
Are
But
you
it's kind of like
are you a Doge millionaire?
no, I wish I was, right? I wish I was. You know, like this, like last 3 years, some people made like billions. But you know, I made some money off of it because I transferred my money into Ethereum because I had to pay to the OpenSea to mint my coins.
You got to pay. You got to pay them through crypto.
Yeah, you have to
How
pay
much it
with
cost
Ethereum
to mint an item?
So depends on depends on the cost of the coin, of course. But usually, when the Ethereum is about 2,020, you know, 2,500 roughly, it's about 60, 70, $80. Sometimes, you know, in the like a rush hour, it could be, let's say, $200. Crazy amount. So
that was when it was
you know,
going up, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah. But now it's smaller than that, basically.
So like you got to pay to mint just to get your like your PFD or your PDF and your JPEG or your PSD as a to put it on a blockchain, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. But OpenSea gives you this chance where,
Do you hear that, everyone? Do you hear that? You get the artists have to pay to put their artwork on a blockchain, so that's why they have to charge to sell their NFT to you,
right.
to get back their money.
Minting is actually more expensive than just selling your work, basically, right? So you have to. Some people just sell it, you know, just to kind of make, you know, ends meet, basically. Just kind of like, you know, you don't make any money. You just kind of want to move your assets, move your work. But it's an interesting concept still. It's kind of like you are you know, and it's like I sometimes I take, for example, this whole idea about multiverse, which I kind of like, and I'm been embracing.
Spider-Man.
Like a spider, no, just a where, you know, there's this world out there.
Sliders, you know what Sliders is?
No.
Oh, Sliders is an old show where this guy made an invention where he can click a button and he goes to a different Earth.
Right, I see. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, basically, right? So it's like you buy real estate in this virtual world,
yeah,
and you have this you know, exhibition spaces in the virtual world. So I sometimes I go back and I take, you know, just kind of perception of how my art would look in this multiverse, you know, exhibition spaces, basically.
Yeah,
and so it's very cool. It's a very, very interesting idea, but it's also, it's kind of like, you know, people talk about this. It's more of a technological means of showcasing your work. I feel, right? But the idea of just the inspiration, the creation is still there for the artist to come up with. Like, you cannot just substitute. I mean, of course, you can take, you know, you know, you have like so many different digital editors that could, like, you know, picture your, you know, your reality in a different ways. But, you know, when you try to come up with something that's cool and interesting and satisfying to yourself, you know, it takes a lot of work still. It takes a lot. Even so, you have, you know, in this digital device hundreds of people who can go and help you out and paint for you some stuff, and you then take it and you kind of you mingle it and you transpose it and you kind of combine it together and present it. You still have to just do the work. Basically, it's unavoidable. Although I remember like a digital documentary, not digital, just a documentary about Dali, right? Like Dali, Salvador Dali. I watched maybe like about 7 documentaries about him. So like when he was in New York, he was already super famous, of course, right? He was in New York. He was like on the, maybe like it's in his 70s or something like that, 60s and 70s. So he would just sell his talent. He would just like draw a little painting, like when it took him like a minute to paint, basically, right? It would still contain the cool idea usually, right? Because he had so many of them. But he would do like in a minute, like a little thing, like a little kind of scribble or something like that, like a little doodle. And he would give it to somebody as a payment for, staying in a hotel or, or like, like doing something, like some kind of like an exchange of goods, basically, right, and services. So I guess it doesn't necessarily mean that great art has to be, painfully produced for hours and days and days and days, right? So this whole idea about starving artists and, artists who is in pain and, and just kind of like, sleepless nights, go in and out. And I don't subscribe to that it has to happen, but it's, it could happen, but not necessarily. Let's put it this way.
But I would like to pose a counter argument to that, where you don't see a lot of 1-minute drawings being sold for millions of dollars from contemporary artists in galleries right now.
Agreed.
Okay. Like it would literally have to be like someone right now who's able to sell their work for it'd have to be like the contemporary artists right now that are able to sell work for tens of thousands of dollars, and for them to be able to like, okay, I'm going to completely switch what I'm doing and do like scribbly works that take me 5 seconds, and I'm going to sell this for a lot of money. But now, I think Instagram and the social media realm has kind of skewed the taste of the populace a little bit to kind of lean towards certain type of genres a little bit more.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah. You still have to have you have to come up with something interesting, something new, right?
Yeah.
Something kind of that takes some efforts, basically, even if it's digital, basically, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking and definitely like monitoring this thing called what's the name of it? It's called I forgot. It's like this website where these NFTs are being dropped every day.
Oh yeah.
And the stuff that's being sold there, usually it's animation.
Yeah.
And it's usually complex animation. Let's put it this way. I mean, I kind of have an idea, rough idea. I've learned a couple of different programs that people use, Cinema 4D, PixArt, Adobe After Effects, etc. I know that some of the stuff that's being done there, it's not as simple as as it sounds, basically.
Yeah.
Or it takes some effort, some time to to master and to kind of present and to. But then it's also so I'm kind of like mixed feelings about that. I have mixed feelings about that.
I would love to see like an Instagram influencer, like an artist that has like 5 million followers, and their whole library is nothing but like the simplest, like the end of Dali's work, where he went like really abstract and really simple. I would love to see someone like that with that many followers. And it'd be hard. It would be really hard to find someone like that who has that kind of pool I think it has to do with the climate of art right now. There's just a market of art that's being funneled on those algorithms that's being put forward to viewers more than others. And you know, it's like a gestural figure drawing, a really good gestural figure drawing, like that one that takes like 30 seconds is usually only appreciated by like other artists,
True. Right, right.
and like, wow, that is a really good gesture drawing. And then to like the average person, they look at that like, I don't understand that looks like an unfinished piece. It's like, no, this person knows what they're doing, because that shows that person knows exactly how the figure is built, and they expressed it without really doing anything.
Yeah, effortless, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I know, Matt, that you are also an artist, and I see a beautiful painting of a crocodile, right, or a dinosaur.
Yeah.
So, you like in your pursuit of that, what are you I mean, like, I guess the idea is right. I mean, so I wanted to share with you something, and please tell me if you agree, right?
Okay.
So this concept of wanting to be famous, this concept of achieving the fame, and not fortune. I mean, fortune is, okay, it's understandable, it's logical. But if you ask people, do you want to be famous? Not a lot of people will say, yes, I want to be famous. It has to be, a certain kind of person, or maybe a certain kind of person in a particular development of life, who is kind of comfortable with himself or herself to say that I want to be famous. I want to be known to everybody for doing something, right? It doesn't matter what it is, but I just want to be famous, basically, right? Let's say famous about art, famous artist, right? So, so my idea is that, so some people want to be famous, and this whole Instagram, as you mentioned, is just all facilitation of that, right? You can be famous for doing nothing, just famous for being famous, right? Mm-hmm. But then the idea is that some people say it's a bad thing. Not a bad thing, but it's not it's, if you're famous for being famous, you don't produce nothing, you don't contribute nothing, you don't make the world a better place, or whatever.
There's a
right?
lot of that on there.
A lot of that, yes, absolutely. Yeah. But at the same time, so this burning desire to be famous is the desire. So if you imagine that, if you subscribe to that idea that humans are made in the image of God, that's, the Christian Bible, the Jewish Bible, right? The Torah, the Judeo-Christian world. And, I think there's also like a Muslim idea about that as well. So when you subscribe to that every human individual has, a divine presence in them, then desire to be famous is nothing more than the desire to be loved by God, basically, right? So if you want to be loved by God, you want to be loved by as many people as possible, because the more people love you or love your work, the more divine presences combined together love you, basically, or like your work, or whatever you want to call it, basically, right? But this whole idea of the attention that people give you, an attention of, just the desire of being, being like viewed, or whatever you produce is being appreciated or being looked at or being heard by different people, is nothing more than just the desire of being loved by God, basically, right? So when you do your drawings, and I see your Facebook, you post almost like every week, right? Like a new drawing when you start from scratch, and you kind of build up. I love the shades, even that painting that you have, like of a crocodile. It's pretty cool. So what are you trying to achieve? Like, what are you like? Is being famous part of your aim, part of your goal?
I don't know about that. I think that the simplest one, the simplest answer would be to be accepted enough that you can achieve monetary stability.
Okay.
sort of like where you like you can just live off your work, really, you know,
Okay.
to do exactly what you like doing and not have to do something else that doesn't give you satisfaction, you
Okay.
know.
Hmm.
So like I guess the end result, the end goal is not necessarily to be famous, but to be able to do what I love full time,
Okay.
you know, instead of it be like this thing that I just do on the outside. Like I'm like I'm just like one of the like the stereotypical artists where like, you know, it's like a side hustle right now, you know, but
Sure.
it's not in the works to be a I don't like talking about myself in this way because it's like it's almost what's it called, it's not personal, but it's like what is the word? It's just I can't I don't know the word, but like it's it's like addressing
Intimate.
it,
Intimate.
intimate maybe. It's like addressing a failure,
Sure. I
you
understand what
know.
you're saying. I agree. Like,
So like every day that I'm not able to do it full time is like saying I'm failing at it. But you
I
know what?
understand what you're saying. Yes. Okay.
But the fact that I'm doing it every day is me getting one step away from failing. All right, I guess.
Got it.
Um, and also, you know, the doing it daily thing where I do a drawing a day is for me to kind of keep my abilities sharp and to improve as I go. You know, as a so I do I do live stream art every day, and I'm not particularly knowledgeable in the digital realm, and so like when I'm talking about it and I'm doing it at the same time, it just reaffirms what I'm learning, and it makes it easier and easier to explain what I'm doing every time I do it, even though it might be the same thing over and over again.
Okay.
Like I don't know. No, there's the answer. The quick yes and no answer is no. I'm not seeking fame because
Uh-huh.
I don't know what that really means. Like in the whole scheme of thing, maybe like who's like okay. Like here's what I think fame would be is like this is what I saw this the other day. I saw a little article and I got mad because it just angered me. It made me so upset. So like there was this YouTuber that has like I don't know how many followers they have, like 2 million, 4 million. They're making money just having videos streaming on there. And the YouTuber makes an account for their 1-year-old kid, makes a YouTube account for the 1-year-old kid, posts the video of their 1-year-old kid, like, oh, my kid's got their own YouTube account, and like because that person has their own, because that little 1-year-old kid has a YouTube account, that 1-year-old kid now has 1 million followers just because their parents, you
Yeah.
know, has 5 million or more followers, and that's like that's famous, like where your kids who do nothing become famous,
Yeah.
you know. That I think that would be famous. That's famous to me, and I'm
Okay.
like,
I understand.
and that,
I get it.
and that would be like that to me drives me bananas because I'm like, here I am. I see all these other. I talk to all these artists. You know, I talk to artists. I'm talking to you. I talk to other artists every week, and they're doing work every day. Every day, they're in the dirt, they're in the grime, they're working their butt off, you know, and then they're like they might get one sale here, two sales there. They might get a couple people to start following them on Instagram, and here someone else comes along the line and just posts the one video of their little kid, and then boom,
Yeah.
they're an influencer now. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they've done nothing at this point other than share the same DNA as someone else, and like boom, there that really that kind of pulls my string. That like
Do you feel it's unfair?
it kind of pulls like a sense of self-doubt in me as an artist. It's like, oh man, I'm working my butt off here. I'm putting in the hours. I'm grinding out work. I'm talking to people, and then someone else does that, and it's just like, wow. It's like, whoa. But what are you
Right.
going to do? You can't
Yeah.
you can't do anything about it, right? You can only make yourself better.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
only do something better each day. You know, um, and in the I think in the acute, like in the very beginning for that person, that young child, it might benefit them, but later on it might not, because they might not have to learn skills,
Hmm?
because they won't have to
Oh,
acquire
yeah.
things, they won't have to learn
It,
anything.
it could backfire so badly for them. I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. um so I have there's a question from one of the guests here on, and they want to know who inspired you into art. I think I have an idea who the answer is, but who inspired you to go into art? Like, what was your inspiration? What kind of artist?
Right. So the like this whole idea of Matisse, initially it was Matisse trying to paint the transformation of light. I thought that idea was so cool, right? Where you try to capture on the canvas or on a digital file how light changes the perception of how the subjects are represented, basically, or objects are represented, basically, right? So that was the first idea. Another inspiration came from, like, I'm a huge fan. I was fascinated by the Futurist Manifesto, basically, right? This guy Marinetti wrote the manifesto, and that was like a couple of lines. I still remember that, So we thought that we hold that the like a engine of the car, or like engine of the machine working at the full speed, is much more beautiful than the Venus of I forgot the Venus, like in Louvre Museum, like an ancient Greek statue of Venus, like one of the most famous in the world, basically, right? So that idea that technology in the new age, the technology is just transforming the way art is represented, is created, is perceived, and just like what kind of capabilities it provides. It's fascinating to me. I mean, I'm not a trained artist. I have like some classes and stuff like that. So, but for me, it was just the idea that I kind of took. Okay, I take transformation of light, the fascination with technology, and the whole idea of the futurism, but like a futurism of the 21st century. And then this whole idea of the Roy Lichtenstein of like taking the like technology and painting a human painting as if it's painted by the robot or a machine. And like I kind of took it to the next level of just taking like a machine painting a painting as if it's painted by the human hand, but actually painted by the technological kind of machine. And then also another idea was this kind of an idea of the idea called Zaum, right? It's Zaum. It's like so. There's this like a Russian guy, Russian poet, Khlebnikov. His name was basically. So his idea was that like we have to go beyond the language, the understanding of the right, because language, English, Russian, French or whatever, it gives you a defined set of tools and representations, expressions that you can use to express yourself. But there is a semantics of a language that allows you to kind of present, like you have a different personality on a different language. But to step out really of the defined sets of boundaries of a particular personality or emotion, you have to come up with your own language, basically, right? So you have to come up with different words. You have to take, let's say, for example, English sounds, English letters, and join them together to come up with different words, maybe, or like different. So the representation or expression of reality should be done with this thing called Zaum, which just goes beyond the defined language, because language in a sense is limiting, basically, right? Is limiting to a particular sense of, cultural background, like a historical background, like a national background, maybe also. It kind of binds you or like connects you to a particular set of standards. But if you come up with your own language, with your own ideas, not bound in a particular predefined sets, you can then achieve something interesting and fresh, basically. So that's what I'm trying to do with all of my paintings. But I'm trying to kind of, come up with so all of those were inspirations, but then like every painting of mine is just an attempt to go beyond the defined standards or stereotypes of language, culture, and reality, basically.
Very cool. Thanks. Thanks for sharing that response. That was a good one. Real good.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. What kind of financial advice can you give me?
So right, so what I'm looking right now, I'm not historically I'm not as successful in finance. I mean, I work in a bank in finance and risk management, basically. I'm trying to mitigate risks, right?
Okay.
So I'm more so like, that think about somebody who, okay, if you are risking your money, like that's how much you're not going to be able to, like how to make sure you're not going to lose everything, basically, right? So you only lose a little bit, basically, right? So there are a couple of standards such as diversification and, but so here's my idea right now, right? We are living in the world of like a huge transformation of wealth. The last year saw an inclusion of about 30% of the entire money flow, right? So the Fed is printing the money. About 25 to 30% of the money that's in circulation right now has been printed in the last year, right? So therefore, hard assets such as houses and other hard cars, etc. Well, car is more depreciating asset, but like something that's more tangible, right? Hard assets usually should go up in prices in general. But so my idea right now, okay, and maybe I don't know if you agree with me, and I'm not claiming, but essentially, if you take Biden's idea that the fact that we're going to try to limit the use of gas and carbon fuels and everything else related to pollutions of the world, and try to make electric cars the idea that we're going to actually grow. And we saw that Tesla is like hugely appreciated in value for the last 2 years, and there's this company called NIO by Chinese manufacturer, and so I would say, like, I'm thinking right now, I'm looking at like electric cars, and I'm trying to take like a piece of each to see what's going on, basically, because my idea is that, like, my projection is that electric cars will overtake gas cars at some point.
So
because of the
So buy electric cars or buy like stock in electric cars?
Stock on electric cars. Yeah, stock, like buy, let's say, like 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 top performers, like top cars, like in each country, and then see where it leads, basically. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I've been wrong many times, so that's
So that's your thought?
That's my thought, yeah.
And where are you vested in there? Are you invested in some Tesla?
Yeah, some Tesla, some NIO, some NI, like, so yeah, it's like a CCIV. It's like this other car. So like I'm thinking about it. Like, I'm not heavily invested yet, but I feel that it's the opportunity that we have right now. I think. I mean, it grew up in price already. It's already like Tesla is like up like hundreds of percents of times since it was like in 2018. But I mean, I don't have anything other than that, basically.
What are your thoughts on the crypto market?
Like, it's very, very strange, Matt, right? So what is crypto? In a sense, is that, I mean, I'm thinking about, okay, my paintings, let's say I produce, let's say 300 paintings so far. They are also a crypto, right? So each painting represents a particular token of my art, of my talent, or whatever, my creativity, and like that's what I'm selling, basically, right? So crypto is just like, this this remote control is a token, basically, right? So
That's a
crypto is
remote
nothing more
token.
than just it's just a token perceived, like, I mean, like, I don't know, like a phone, right? Like, or a sock even, right? So
You have a sock token.
a sock token, right? A sock token, right? So that kind of a, like, so it's just the value of it is just in the cumulative perception of the value there, right? It's not like a stock that produces, of a company that produces some kind of like a profit, right? It's the perception. It's just like a gold, I guess, right, to some degree. But gold is tangible. Like you can take it and you can lick it, you can actually bite it, you can
Do
like
you
you
lick and
hold
bite
it.
gold?
Well, so I have my uncle who would do that, basically, right? He would take out like a big ball of gold, basically, right? Like and just like lick it and bite it and sleep with it, basically, right? And there was also I remember there was this like a cool cartoon
From
uh,
DuckTales?
not DuckTales, no.
Where the guy was diving in
Uh,
a pool of gold.
yeah,
And he
that was a
swam in
cool
it.
one, absolutely. Yeah, and swimming in the money. But this was like a South Park, right? So it was like a South Park. It was the guy who achieved some kind of a success or like some kind of like a health, and he said like, how you do it? Well, he says like, I'm just taking like a liquid injections of cash into my bloodstream, basically, right? So he takes cash, he squeezes it like for some like juice, and he takes like an injection of like, so yeah, I
I know
mean
what
it's
episode you're talking about. That's
yeah. So it's yeah, it's like I don't know about crypto, but I think it's pretty cool. Basically, people are hyped up about it. And it's a lot of my friends are invested in crypto. Are you invested?
A little bit, not a
A little
lot.
bit, right?
I'm a Doge millionaire.
Wow, that's cool. That's
No, I'm
cool.
not.
You have millions of Doge coins, right?
No. No, I don't.
Cool.
What advice can you give to other artists?
Um, what kind of advice I could give to other artists? I would like to say that you this, so there was a story. I'll tell you a cool story that I learned recently, like so this painting of Matisse called Red Studio, which was called top 5 most influential paintings in the world of the 20th century, probably about $700 million. It's in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, right? So there was this guy, Mark Rothko, right? He tried to paint all kinds of different things for about 20 years before he sat on his meditations painting, when you probably know like that some people say only like a child could do that, like 3 lines of color, and each painting represents some sort of an emotion, basically, right? That's what he says. But how he achieved that? He went to this Museum of Modern Art when they acquired this painting of Matisse Red Studio. And the idea was that it was actually a transformation of reality to a flat surface into very few different colors, basically, right? So you take like a 3D reality, you transform it into the flat surface, and then that's how it looks, basically, Red Studio. So Mark Rothko would spend hours and hours and days in front of that painting. He would cry. He would sleep there on the couch, basically, in front of the painting. It was like I remember like it was like a story I read about it, like a documentary. So until it inspired him to come up with this meditation. So it was kind of transformation of reality, right? So I think like, and this is advice even to myself, I want to give, basically, right? Is that you basically, this creative vision, like I feel like some of the best art that I produce is not the art that I produce. It's somehow somebody else. It's somebody, maybe it's divine presence, maybe somebody else, but like I cannot replicate it. I just cannot, like, how could I do that? I mean, sometimes I think about it. How, and and I wish I could say that, oh, I thought the idea and then I painted it, then I called it the way it is. But very often I just like kind of like I scribble and doodle and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden just it connects the dots. So 3 things I want to give: read a lot about history of art, read a lot about the current technological, and political advancements, and just focus your this kind of creative insight, like the source of this beautiful creative energy, just so that actually it's developed as a muscle, basically. Paint every day, paint, as much as possible. I mean, of course, sometimes you take some time off and that's, but when you paint almost like every day or often rather, right? Often, it develops as a muscle and it's much easier to do like the next one than the previous one. And then you become skilled at it. You become just kind of like and it's not even a skill. It's some kind of like a opening up of the creative fluid, like a stream, I want to say. So I would say like just to do that basically, right? And I that's what I'm trying to do as well, basically. I feel, yeah.
So read, research new technologies, and create daily.
Yeah, create as much as possible. Yeah.
Well, that goes in conjunction with your morning habit. You every day you wake up and you do your exercises, you do your meditations, and you pray, and then you paint for an hour.
Yes, I try to. Yeah, I try to, absolutely. Yeah.
Is that
so I try to practice what I preach, but sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes it's there are things in life. I'm like you. I'm not. It's not my that's not where I get my financial independence.
Yeah.
I work for in the financial industry, but I'm getting there. I'm trying to get there to the same place that you were talking about. That you get some financial stability to be able to do that like every day, basically. And
you want it. You want it to be like the whole process to kind of be as easy as you drinking a cup of coffee in the morning.
Yep.
Or like where you're not saying, "Oh, here I go, I gotta go do drawing again," and usually go, right?
Yeah.
You want to be like, okay, and you want to be like, it feels like a morning coffee where it's, I don't know if that's what you do, but like for me, like a morning coffee is like, this is nice because I don't have to do anything.
Yeah. It's like you just do it like on an autopilot, basically, right?
Yeah, it's like
you're enjoying it, basically. It's part of the enjoyment.
Automatic, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That's some good. Those are really good ones. You had like a three. Was it like a 3-tier or 3 courses of action, right?
3 pillars of like artistic.
3 pillars. 3 pillars of action.
Man, that's awesome.
What's that?
That's great. Yeah, thank you for having me here. I mean, it's so great that you do that. I'm a huge fan of your of what you do, and I mean, I know you're an artist, but you also you do this interviews, and it gives artists to. I think it's one of the profound interviews that I've had, like just kind of discussion, not even an interview, but just a discussion where I'm able to express what I'm thinking. It would be so just kind of like a data point, like a check mark on, okay, here is my representation of reality right now, what I'm thinking about.
True. That is true.
I love what you said, that you're trying to capture that.
Like a time capsule.
Yes, like a time capsule.
Like an artist time capsule, and I think that's that. Those aren't my words. That was some other artist that made that analogy, that reference, and I was like, that's a good one. I'm taking it. Because I don't know of any other better explanation for it at the moment, at this current moment, right? Do you have any words of wisdom? Like you've read a lot, right? I've gathered that, or you've listened to a lot. Do you have anything that you like, you think of every day that is like a quote or some sort of mantra or something that like really defines or sets the tone for your day?
Well, it's kind of like I want to say, I'd like to say, so in a simple way, things are not as they appear. But then what I'm thinking about is I always remember this, like one of my favorite novels is like a Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderworld. And there was this couple of two stories basically, right? So one story is that this Baroness, she was Alice was walking with Baroness, and Baroness would suggest to her, okay, and the meaning of that is this, and the meaning of that is that, and then she said, like, so be what you would seem to be, and that I think goes back to to what you were saying, that you manifest with your words, you manifest who you want to become. And the same thing is called to be what you would think to be. Or as she said, like if you wanted to put more simply, never imagine yourself to be otherwise than what you were, might have been, to be perceived to be otherwise than what you had been, would not be otherwise as it would be perceived by others. Something I don't recall exactly, but essentially just kind of be what you would seem to be. Things are not as they appear. Don't judge anything when you look at it right away, and just try to dig deeper about that, and just kind of like anybody's like even when you look at somebody's like like just the deeper intentions and deeper motivations are usually a lot more complex and a lot more interesting than when it might appear at the first sight.
So is that be what you think to be, or be what seems to be?
Be what you would seem to be.
Be what you would seem to be. What you would seem. I'm going to write this down. Sometimes I like to put quotes into a journal of mine. Be what you'd seem to be. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Be what you would seem to be. Mm-hmm. So like essentially like what exactly what you said, right? So you manifest what you are saying, basically. You try to to adjust your attitude and your actions to meet what you perceive yourself to be, basically.
Yeah, negative. I can't stress this enough. Negative thoughts just reproduce more negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Like it's easier to think negative things than to think of positive things daily. Like you can find like it's easier to find something wrong with the day than to find something that was good with the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know why we're conditioned to see that. I think it has to do with survival, maybe.
Probably, right?
Like a survival reflex that we have to see all the negative things. So we have to see and the negative things would be dangers in the world, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Comes from like a ancestry, like right, like years and ages, like where I imagine like they would kill like a bull or somebody, like a mammoth, like, and then say, okay, great, we have a great time, we're gonna eat. But are there any tigers around, right? So they would always think about something bad about it.
Yeah.
And so like we have to, but then like what you focus on expands. I firmly believe that. What you focus on expands. So absolutely, it's positive thoughts. Be what you would think to be. Imagine yourself to be somebody who you want to be, and feel the feelings that you would experience by imagining that you already achieved that, basically.
What you focus on expands. That's a good one too.
Mm.
Do you have any dream projects? Like we were talking about, like these big grand ideas. You kind of expressed it a little bit, where you want to have all your work displayed in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Would you compare? Is that like a dream project or dream thing? Something you dream about?
Yeah, it's a dream project. Absolutely.
And what would it like? Are you like thinking to have them on like billboards or in like the subways or?
So subways, billboard, but also so there's like a Rockefeller Center. There's like a Rockefeller Center. There's like a skating rink there, like a big there's like an area there. I remember I was fascinated by sculpture by I guess Jeff Koons, basically, right? Like ballerina, I mean, there was like a little dog, but ballerina was like even more cool, basically, right? So I could imagine that. I just imagine myself just to have my own either painting or like a. I'm not doing sculpture yet, basically, but I'm thinking about it. So like some kind of but more so more so in the digital liquid screens, let's say on Times Square. That's like
Okay.
my kind of perception, basically. I even have like a paintings of me standing in front of Times Square, and all the screens on Times Square are covered with my painting, basically, like my exhibition on Times Square. That's just like that gives me such immersive pleasure. This idea that this could happen, basically.
So you want to have an exhibition in Times Square?
Yeah, yeah.
How would that?
Or
How
things
would you
on
do
Times
that?
Square, huh?
How would you do that? How what would you have to go through? Who would you have to go through in New
Well,
York to get that?
well, that's interesting. So there is thing called I mean, they used to have this 3 minutes before the noon, before when one day turns into another, they would allow like these artists to submit their works, and then they would choose it. I've seen like maybe once or twice, basically. I don't know what the selection criteria, but I don't want it to be limited to just kind of a 1 minute, basically. I want it to be like for a day, basically, right? Just kind of like or like for, it's kind of crazy idea. I don't think it's going to be possible because it's more of a commercial, commercial tool to basically like to drill the brain of a human, to incite him to to act in a particular way by buying these things, or like by watching a particular movie. I feel like when I am on Times Square, I feel like I'm in a like I'm a rat in a lab, basically, right? And like all this like highest contemporary like scientists of of the human psychic, just kind of looking at me from like a magnifying glass and just trying to poke me, or like screw like a drill my brains, basically. But if I had like my art on that Times Square, basically, right, like for like a day, basically, or maybe for like a week, but I mean maybe not a week, is like maybe for a day, right? My biblical art, I think that would be very cool.
You could have the word Gucci on the bottom so that it becomes advertising, or
Which
or
year?
or, or like some M&Ms.
Yeah.
The only reason why I say that because I remember when I have been to Times Square, they had like the M&M store there. That's all I remember. I don't know
Yeah.
what you. So,
Cool.
what other ones are you? What other dream projects do you have besides that one?
So um so um so I mean, like just a like public display of the art, right? um I think I should think of that. I should think some more of that, basically.
Hmm.
I mean, like yeah, I mean, I imagine I just love talking about my art and about philosophy and about culture and about, so that's why I was just so happy to get your invitation, and just to have a discussion with you, right? So I love talking about this, philosophies and ideas. So I always imagine myself to be speaking to like a stadium of people, basically,
Hmm.
right? So the stadium of people, about like TED Talk maybe, but TED Talk is more like a smaller scale because they're like a little bit like, usually they're small kind of stadium, like small kind of areas. But I imagine myself speaking to like a hundreds of thousands of people, like a Wembley, or like a East Rutherford, Giants Arena or something like a huge, like a stadium where I could just talk about my art. That's kind of another kind of dream that I have, basically.
I think you could achieve a TED Talk. You put your efforts toward it. You
Yeah,
have,
yeah, I
I
agree. I
mean,
agree.
you
Have you
have.
tried?
No, I have not. But you have the ability to talk for on end on in a, an expanse, right? Like indefinitely. So that's a good skill to have, right? So something that you could put that on. Do you have a dream board? Do you have like a dream board?
I don't. I should get it. Like, right. So the dream board.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
would put like a painting of that, like a photograph of that.
Maybe you put like on your dream board TED Talk, and then you put that photo of you with the juxtaposed images of your work on the in Times Square, right?
Uh-huh.
So that
Yeah.
you're subconscious, you're burying that idea into the subconscious mind.
Yes. Yeah.
I
I'll
think
do
that'd
that.
be cool.
That would be
That'd be
cool.
very
Absolutely.
cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Great.
so I have a few more questions. Yeah, I do. If you could choose another medium that you can only that you had to work that you could only use for a year, like you can't use your tablet, you can't use your digital programs. What would you use for instead of that? What would you switch to?
I would switch to sculpture, and it would be a kinetic sculpture. It would be like like I would get like I have this idea about I have the old like a old what do you call it, like a vacuum cleaner basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I have this idea about like a particular kinetic sculpture. So I think that's what I would do. And actually, I'm trying to get in that as well. So some kind of like it has to act, has to has to be like a powered by electricity. It has to be like a 3D basically, that's what I'm thinking I would do.
Oh, very cool. Thank you. Well, Sergey, it's been a long one. What do you say?
Yeah, 2.5 hours, right?
Two and a
It's
half
great.
hours. I'm out of steam. I don't know about you.
Yeah, me too.
And I just want to say thank you so much for taking time. I know it's an hour. You're an hour ahead of me, so it's it's more late there than it is here. And I just want to say thank you for talking to me, sharing to me your work, talking about your life, talking about your ideas, your philosophy, and that I really do appreciate you, and really do appreciate your time. Okay.
Matt, thank you so much. And it's I mean, I want to say you're welcome, right? Because that's kind of like, because you start like thanking each other, like, and then you can go like,
Oh, thank
right?
you. Oh, yeah.
But first of all, you're welcome. But also, I'm so grateful for your it's great to be on your show. It's awesome to talk to you, and I'm a huge fan just of what you're doing, and it's a pleasure and an honor. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Sergey, where can people find you?
So my Instagram is like Sergey_KIR_art. Sergey SERGEY_KIR_ART. That's probably, like, I would say, the most up to date. I have a website, I have a Facebook as well, but the Instagram is where I keep most of my art like up to date. So I would say I would welcome if your audience and the people would just go and just check me out.
Yes, and those links should be in the description if you forget them. All right, so just check them out, everyone, and don't forget to give Sergey a follow on Instagram and Facebook and anywhere else, and check out his artwork as well. And for those that enjoy the show, please subscribe to the channel. Really do appreciate each and every one of you. You make this happen. You make this. You basically make this happen. Right. That's about it. This wouldn't exist without you guys. So I really do appreciate you. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sergey,
thank you. Thank you, Matt. Have a great night. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone. Pierson out.